Hi again. It's Tim, your living sky guy from the Paris of the Prairies, beautiful Saskatoon. Now last night before the clouds rolled in, I did a little bit of deep sky imaging from my front driveway while I was hanging out with my wife watching a little television. Before I went to bed, I posted a quick image that I'd put together of the Saturn region, and this morning when I looked at my phone, there was a question attached to that, and it was a very simple question with not a very simple answer. So instead of me trying to reply in a text message, I decided to put together a brief little video about how I do my astrophotography. So the first thing I want to talk about is how simple it was to get started in astrophotography, and then how things can change. When I first started in astrophotography, I was just shooting simple wide field shots. I wanted to get photographs of the Milky Way and the stars. And to start off in this hobby is very simple. First, I needed a tripod, then a camera with a wide-angle lens. And then it was just a case of driving out to a dark sky, sitting at the side of a road, and taking photographs. And that's how you get hooked in astrophotography. And then of course what happens, like anything that's addictive, you want more and you want a better high from it. And for me, that better high was deep sky astrophotography. Going above and beyond just the Milky Way, but looking at the details in the Milky Way and other areas of the sky. So that's where things go a little bit off the rails. The first thing you need is a way to stop those stars from moving with high magnification. And that means either a star tracker, or in this case, a motorized equatorial mount. Star trackers will start you anywhere from about $400 and go up from there. This particular mount is what's known as a go-to mount that's much more accurate than a star tracker, and also makes it easier for me to be able to find things in the sky. The next thing you need is a way to get closer to those stars, and that means either a telescope, or when you're just starting out, your telephoto lens that you already have for your camera. The next step is a telescope for your telescope. I know it sounds redundant, but I'll explain why in a moment. Next, we're going to look at a camera. But not just any old camera. You can start off with your DSLR or mirrorless camera like I did, but once you graduate from that, you're getting into a dedicated astrophotography camera. But not just one camera, you're going to need two of them. So the first camera is going to be attached to the back end of the big telescope, where your eye would be if you were looking through the telescope. And your second camera, this little one right here, is going to go into the telescope's telescope. Now, what's different about an astrophotography dedicated camera than a point-and-shoot camera? Dedicated cameras, first off, give you features like not all the things you don't need, like mirrors and shutter speeds and apertures and things like that, but they also have the sensor that you'd have in your normal camera, but also in some cases a cooling mechanism on that sensor to be able to cool it down as low as -20 Celsius. Now, the cooler that sensor is, the sharper your images are going to be. Now, there are different types of astro cameras. This particular one's what's known as a one-shot color camera. So this one's basically similar to my regular mirrorless cameras, as in when I take a photograph, it shoots in red, green, blue. Okay. For the people who really get deep into astrophotography, they're going to be using a mono camera. A camera essentially that shoots in black and white, but looks at those red, green, blues as different frequencies with filters. And the advantage there is a greater sharpness and a greater amount of detail than you're going to get with a one-shot camera. Now, what's the second camera for? The second camera has to do with auto guiding. Now, the telescope is mounted on a mount that will allow me to essentially try to cancel out the rotation of the Earth, having stars that look like stars. Now, the higher the magnification you go, the more sensitive the movement of the Earth becomes. And the problem you run into is no matter how well that mount works, it's never going to perfectly mimic the Earth's rotation. So you're always going to have some wandering of your stars. So The second telescope and second camera is what's known as an auto-guiding system that basically focuses on one star and keeps it centered on those crosshairs, making micro adjustments of the mount to make sure that I can shoot for 5 or 10 minute exposures and still have stars that look like stars. So the next thing is, how is all that controlled? How does this telescope talk to this camera, talk to this camera, talk to this mount? Through a computer. And there are different types of computer systems. You can use a laptop with guiding software, or you can use what I'm using here. It's called the ASI Air Pro. And this is a little Raspberry Pi computer that I attach to my telescope. So we're just going to put that over here. So it's going to ride on the telescope, and it will be able to make this, and this all talk to each other to make sure that I can have a really good quality image at the end of it. Once I've got all these parts together, they need to be connected, which means putting together a whole bunch of wires. Now, once all of that is connected and plugged in and plugged into a power supply, then I launch my tablet, which has dedicated software on here, which will connect wirelessly to this little thing right here. And now I can control both cameras and the mount remotely, wirelessly from the tablet, and that could be from right beside it, or if it's minus 30 outside and I'm doing this in my driveway, right from the comfort of my warm house. Now, that being said, in the old days, when I was just shooting with a camera, a lens, and a tripod, I had to go out to dark skies to be able to get away from the light pollution, to be able to get those photographs. Now, still, ideally, it's best to do even deep sky imaging from a dark site, because that's where you're going to get your best results, getting away from the light pollution. But there is some kind of deep sky imaging that can take place even in the heart of the city. And that's where this little thing comes into play. Right here, what we have is a filter, and there are different types of filters that will help to negate some of those problems with light pollution. So this particular filter is what's known as a dual narrowband filter. So what it's doing is it's looking at two spectrums of light, essentially the hydrogen alpha, which is red, and the oxygen, which is sort of in the blue-green areas. It's eliminating most of the effects of light pollution in the city, allowing me to put this between the camera and the telescope and be able to do some deep sky imaging without the effects of light pollution from the comfort of my own yard. So then what happens next? Essentially, once I've pointed it to a target, I set up the camera to set up exposures, but not just one exposure. Depending on the subject, most of the subjects I'm doing for deep sky, I'm doing anywhere from 2 to 5 minute exposures, where the camera is collecting light for anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. But it's not just doing that once, it's doing it over and over and over again. The key to getting good astro imaging, especially with deep sky, is gathering data. The more information that you can record, the greater your image is going to look. The more detailed it's going to look, the sharper it's going to look. So how do you get that detail? By not taking one photograph, but taking 20, 40, 60, 100 photographs of the same thing in those 2 to 5 minute exposures. You put them all together in software, you stack it, you do a little bit of magic with Photoshop to be able to bring out some of those highlights and double check the sharpness, and that's how I get the images that you're seeing posted. So that, in a nutshell, is how I get the photographs I get. As you can see, astrophotography, like anything, can be something very simple, can also be something more complicated. The best thing to do is walk before you run, starting with doing wide field imaging. Shoot the Milky Way, shoot the star fields, put your camera in a tripod, go somewhere dark and enjoy the night. But as you get more into it, yes, you're going to want to stretch your abilities and stretch your capabilities. And that's how I got to where I am now. Used to be, if I got to a spot to take photographs, I'm literally shutting off the engine, I'm shooting within minutes. Now I'm shutting off the engine and I'm setting up and probably spending 30 minutes getting set up before I'm taking the first image. But the rewards are endless. And on that happy note, I want to wish you clear skies. If you have any questions, please write them in the comments below. If you like what I said and you want to hear more, I've got other videos on the channel, but also like and subscribe so you don't miss any other new content. Take care, everyone. Clear skies and enjoy the night sky. Well, hi again. It's Tim, your living sky guy from the Paris of the Prairies, beautiful Saskatoon. Now, before I went to bed, I posted an image. And of course, first thing in the morning, I open up Millie. When I first got started in astrophotography, now, Millie, it's just me.